This video is brought to you by my generous backers over on Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel and get cool perks like access to the Discord, seeing the videos a week before anyone else, or exclusive Patreon only gameplays, then feel free to check out my Patreon. The link's in the description below. Haktos the Unscarred versus Atla Palani Sigarda. And I recognise that username. I think he's just pretty much running Atla Palani recently. Let's keep there. We've got a turn 4 Haktos. This doesn't affect abilities, does it? No, it's just spells you cast. So we'll start things off with a tap land. And our opponent is hopefully off to as slow a start as we are. Let's go defense grid and make it difficult for them to do swords to plowshares and stuff like that on our turn. Now a wild growth as well takes them into more ramp maybe. A goblin bombardment. They go down to 4 cards in hand. Do we want to wheel of fortune? Do we want to wheel of fortune? I'm gonna leave it until we've gotten our Haktos down. It entails us... Yeah, I'm just going to leave it. We'll get down Haktos next turn and then draw a card the next turn, and if we're not getting into anything then I'll go for a wheel. I'm just conscious of the fact that my opponent is down to 4 cards in hand. Okay, a Bloodsworn Steward. Let's actually go for an Earthquake here. And hopefully that puts our opponent off of getting out their commander anytime soon. I'm just conscious of the fact that they've got Yavimaya Hallow, which would be able to regenerate off of an Earthquake. Okay, a Taurian Mauler. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you get a +1 counter on it. That is a 3 CMC creature, which they may be able to block with. So let's just go for the Bloodsworn Steward here. Although, I don't know if that'll help us. We cast 2 spells, this becomes a 4/4. Yeah, in fact, let's just get down our commander. And we'll just have to keep our fingers crossed that we don't roll a 3. We roll a 2. So no 2 CMC creatures coming down, hopefully. And then it is an Inferno Titan. Luckily they can't go after our commander with that. They can lightning bolt us though. So it is a race against time now. They might not want to swing in with that. Okay, they obviously... Maybe they've never played against Haktos before. But we do have protection against that creature, so... Taurian Mauler goes down for no reason. We're struggling on mana currently, so do we want the buff from the Bloodsworn Steward? Yeah, it's the difference between us winning across 4 combat steps and 3, so let's go in for the Bloodsworn Steward. The Inferno Titan can't kill it off because it is a 4/4. So we go in at our opponent for 8 commander damage. And then we may be able to go Savage Beating or the Berserker's Onslaught next turn for a win. Just depends on if we get into a land or not. Also depends on whether or not they get into a 2-mana creature. But at least with Double Strike we would be able to kill off the 2-mana creature before it deals any damage to our Haktos. Just going straight in with the Inferno Titan, this will be 9 damage to us, including the combat damage. Okay, but going for 2 onto the Bloodsworn Steward, so I'm guessing they've got some kind of shock in hand. Unless they're just going to play a couple of creatures and go Goblin Bombardment. Ah, I see, Elesh Norn. So I think that actually gets us then. Yeah, in that case, let's go Talisman of Conviction into Wheel of Fortune. We just have to try and get a board wipe at this point. Plateau into a Sol Ring, and that is us done. 8, 9, 10, 11, and then 15 there. So our opponent takes us on this one. We'll just allow them to swing in. Make sure that they know that we don't have anything. And they should just turn everything sideways here. Yeah, I think I've played against this deck a few times now, and they always seem to get into Elesh Norn. I think it's the deck that I'm thinking of. I don't know if you've actually seen it played or not, so all depends on what I upload. Looks like they're just casting more stuff, which there's no need to do. I want to give my opponent the... Okay, they're just going to carry on playing stuff, so we're not going to allow that. We'll just concede. And that's good game to our opponent. Let's get on with another one. Haktos the Unscarred versus Krufix, God of Horizons. With a Signet and a Wasteland. Yeah, we've got a little bit of ramp there. And we can take out some early mana dorks with Star Storm, so hopefully this is alright. Nothing from our opponent on turn 1, so let's attempt this Boros Signet. I don't know if they have early counter magic in their deck or not. Well, if they do, they didn't use it on the Boros Signet there. Alright, a Ponder, which I imagine is exactly what they've just drawn into, otherwise they would have gone for it last turn. We just get into another land, so let's try and get our commander down. In fact, I imagine we land our commander here because our opponent only has that Ancient Ziggurat. That is, mana with creature spells. So unless they've got a Force of Will, they can't counter our Haktos. So next turn we hit them for 6, and then we can take them up to 18 if we're going for Aurelia the turn after. So yeah, we'll just see what our opponent does here. We rolled a 3. They get into Heir of the Wilds, which is a 2 CMC creature, so not too worried about that. We get into this though, which is Aurelia this turn, isn't it? Yeah, that's a really good draw, so let's go for that. So it's 2 combat steps this turn, 2 combat steps next turn, 24 points of commander damage, and that ought to do it for us. And our opponent didn't draw into anything, so just decided to scoop it up. If they didn't draw into anything, then that's fair enough. We were getting into Teferi's Protection. Like I said, we just go in for 2 combat steps next turn, and that's us done. That was another really fast one, so I'm going to try yet again. Haktos the Unscarred versus the incredibly powerful Sigarda, Host of Herons. That mana crypt doesn't necessarily help us yet, but we might have to go Wrath of God. We will keep that. We just need another coloured source. I'll hold up the Arid Mesa just in case we need to path. You never know when your opponent's going to get off to a lightning fast start. Alright, but they just start off with a tap land, so that is the exact opposite of a fast start. Well, we've got 2 pieces of cheat removal at least. Let's go in for the Grand Abolisher. And we're still waiting on another coloured source currently. Just another tap land from our opponent. We are still waiting on that coloured source, so let's just swing in there for 2 points of damage. Put our opponent on that 15 turn clock. Alright, still nothing from my opponent, which I am particularly happy about. Let's go for the Mana Crypt, just so we can get the Day of Destiny in. And that'll give our commander a nice buff. And then our opponent can't do anything during our turn, so we're perfectly safe going in with Grand Abolisher. So they do get to go for the Temple Garden with the Crowson Verge and the Canopy Vista. We're going to be forced into a board wipe here if we don't get into a coloured source. I don't know if we can outrace our opponent. We don't have haste yet. Out comes the Sigarda. Alright, there we go. There's our coloured source. So, we'll have 4 on X with an Earthquake. Once Sigarda gets buffed up, I doubt we'll be able to use Earthquake to take her out. I was thinking the spot removal would be good for dorks and things like that, or the swords is anyway. But apparently our opponent isn't getting into many of those, so we'll just go in for our commander and attempt to outrace them. We can take care of them in 3 combat steps currently. I dare say our opponent can deal with us before then. We might get into double strike, or an extra turn card, double damage, something like that. An extra combat step even. And yeah, might be able to do something. I don't know yet. Serra's Sanctum. That might tap for a lot of mana by the end of the turn. And we rolled a 2, by the way. Sometimes forget to look at that. Don't think it really matters against Sigarda what we roll. We've always got protection from her. We don't always have protection from that, though. That's an Eidolon of Blossoms. Switches on the Serra's Sanctum. Haven't seen an aura onto Sigarda yet. Okay, and that is a 2 CMC creature, which unfortunately has hexproof. That is quite annoying. So they get some free damage onto us here. And they manage to avoid our commander damage as well. Ancient Tomb, we might as well play. How much can we put into Earthquake? That'll be 2, 4, 6, and 7. Which gets rid of their Sigarda, doesn't it? Yeah, I really thought they'd end up buffing their commander here. Oh, it's without flying, isn't it? So that doesn't get rid of Sigarda. Let's just put 4 into X and get rid of the Eidolon of Blossoms and the Sylvan Caryatid so that we can actually try and push some damage through. Gets rid of our Grand Abolisher as well, of course. And as long as they don't continue to make lands, I'm happy. Their Serra's Sanctum is currently switched off. An Aura of Silence, that might affect us. We've got some enchantments. Alright, they're going after our enchantment now. I was going to say that actually takes us off of our 3 combat win, even if we get into double strike, because they could do that at instant speed, but just deciding to go for it now. And Sigarda not swinging in, curiously. There's not really any reason to not swing in. I think people are forgetting that this has protection from everything. So, people not really knowing how to play around Haktos currently. It is still a fairly new commander. Alright, well, speaking of double strike, we would have had the win. So let's go like that. Take more damage off of Ancient Tomb. And then we just have to hope that they don't get a buff onto Sigarda. So playing that Aura of Silence was a good play from our opponent. They go down to 1 life and 20 commander damage. So hitting our opponent with that Grand Abolisher did some work for us clearly. But if they get a 2 power buff onto Sigarda, then we lose next turn. The hexproof on Sigarda is really, really good. Yeah, our opponent's asked in the chat why they can't block with Sigarda. So it's not worthy that they were going to block with Sigarda, which means to me that they don't have a buff aura for her. They might pull one off the top. And they should draw instead of scooping here. Yeah, I had a feeling that was going to happen. Sometimes your opponent, if they misunderstand a card, misreads something, or they wish they'd made a play differently, instead of playing it out, they just decide to pull the rug out from under the game. Like I said, they should have. We were going to draw into a haste creature, so we might have been able to... Yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the very least, they should have swung in with Sigarda. That would have switched off our Ancient Tomb and we might have died to Mana Crypt. And all of this assumes that they weren't getting into an aura that buffs Sigarda's power. So, yet again, seeing an example of an early scoop when someone shouldn't have conceded early, but that's just Magic Online for you. Hopefully you all enjoyed it anyway. I have gotten about 10 games with Haktos tonight and I have not had the best of luck, so I'll have to try and cherry pick the best of a bad bunch. I'm tribalkai on the EDH channel. Thank you for watching.